it's Freiberger from Roadkill here, breaking the news that Junkyard Gold is back. And this season, we've got Magnante looking for Roadkill Gold.
Let's hunt for some Roadkill Rescues. I'm Steve Magnante, hot rod historian, author, and lover of all things cars. I travel all across the country to uncover the forgotten and hidden gems from the automotive world. And now, I'm on the hunt for the next Roadkill Junkyard Rescue project. This is Roadkill's Junkyard Gold. Well, we're back at Hidden Valley Auto Parts in Maricopa, Arizona. I'm here with Roadkill King, Dave Freiberger. This is the yard where we found your Suzuki Samurai last year. We're gonna do the usual shopping for cool stuff, but we have a new task this year, and that's finding Roadkill Rescues that these guys are gonna rebuild. What am I looking for?
Well, I guess the perfect roadkill vehicles.
Okay.
You know, I kind of never know it till I see it, but always popular to find a genuine muscle car that we can like rescue and drive away.
456 Cuda.
Exactly, but also super good to find some crazy little car we can stuff a big block in or something like that. Basically, I just need you to be my eyes and ears out there while you're doing your Junkyard Gold shtick, because I always learn stuff from you, and I'm ready to find more vehicles. You know?
All right. What are you working on right now?
Oh, we're actually bringing back the Super Sammy. So when you hear burnouts in the distance, that'll be me and Dulcich making that happen.
I look forward to smelling that smoke.
I'm gonna go wrench, you go shopping.
You got it. Finding the next roadkill vehicle is no easy task. I know there can be a lot of differing opinions on what makes the best project car, but the fun part is that while I search, there's always plenty to see and learn from, whether it's roadkill worthy or not. This is a pillar. And no, I'm not inside of a Roman Colosseum, but when you see a pillar or a post coupe, you're generally looking at a car maker's cheapest entry-level model. This is a 1965 Plymouth Fury 1 two-door post. This represents the entry-level, bottom-of-the-barrel stripper version of the Fury. Now, 1965 saw Plymouth move the Fury from the mid-size B body to the full-size C body, and there were several versions available: the Fury 1, the Fury 2, Fury 3, Sports Fury, and even the VIP, but none of them had the two-door post body style, only the Fury 1. Now we have to ask, what engine is under the hood? Drum roll, please. Okay, well there's the Slant 6. Yes, the 225 Slant 6 was used in Plymouth Valiants, the compact A body, the mid-size B bodies, and yeah, even the full-size C bodies like this one right here. 145 horsepower, not a ball of fire, but it would get you to the bingo hall okay. Other engines available would have been the 318 Poly, the 383 Wedge, and of course the 413 Wedge. We have to ask, though, was the 426 Hemi ever offered in one of these cars? Yes and no. Never from the factory, but some were built for NASCAR racing. The beauty of this car is that the engine bay is so wide, you could put a Hemi in this thing with no modification, no hammer, no shoehorn, nothing like that. But then we have to ask, is the rest of the car ready for the Hemi? Let's take a look. The good news is that Plymouth put big 11-inch drum brakes on all C bodies, whether it was a 6-cylinder car or a V8 or even a big block. But now we have to think about the rear axle and rear suspension. How about them? Are they up to the job? Let's find out. The rear suspension of this will be leaf springs, as was the case on all Mopars of this period. Here's the 11-inch brakes in the back. Now, that's the diameter. The shoes themselves are about 2 inches wide versus 3 in the front, because after all, the front brakes do more braking than the rears. The leaf springs on this are basic pieces with 5 leaves. We probably want to add a leaf or two to increase the roll stiffness on the car for better handling. One thing I love to see here is the Chrysler 8 3/4 rear axle was used on all Furies, no matter what engine it had. That's a tough rear axle. It'll handle 500 horsepower, no problem. Something I gotta point out though, I live in the Rust Belt, and when I see a quarter panel extension of this clean, I get weak in the knees. You know, this is the first place on Mopars to start to rust and turn to crap, but this car is so rust-free, being an Arizona piece, that these are pristine and factory fresh. It's awesome. Well, let's look inside. Okay, kind of dusty and nasty, but this is the basic split bench seat interior. I do see something kind of cool here, actually, factory installed air conditioning. This would have been about a $500 option. Transmission is a column shifted torque flight. This could have also had a 3-speed manual on the column. Pretty well preserved interior, you know, a little ratty, but tons of potential. This 1965 Fury 1 puts me in a NASCAR state of mind. Now, you gotta remember that 1964, Richard Petty and the 426 Hemi dominated the Daytona 500. In fact, the Hemi was so successful that NASCAR said, don't bring that engine back until you've made a whole bunch more of them. So for 1965, Plymouth boycotted NASCAR, with one exception. NASCAR did say you can bring the Hemi back if you put it in your full-size C-body. So a handful of C-body Furies were raced in NASCAR in 1965, including one that was co-owned by NASCAR founder Bill Fran. What I would do is I'd take this Fury 1, I'd put 15 by 10-inch NASCAR wheels with big Blue Streak tires on it, a full-spec NASCAR roll cage, a 4-speed crashbox transmission, and a 4-barrel NASCAR race Hemi, and pay tribute to the year that the C-body did run in NASCAR.
Now that's something I could see Freiberger and Finnegan cruising to some old NASCAR tracks.
When it comes to Pontiacs in the junkyard, there's nothing like finding a 455, and they often were found in big cars like this 72 Granville. Now, these were available with 400s or the 455. I do see dual exhaust, but there's some more clues we have to add up. Now, in 1972, GM did all automotive collectors a favor by finally adding an engine designation character to the VIN. It's the 5th spot, the letter Y. This car was originally built with the 455 4-barrel. Now, the engine's been scavenged, probably to wind up in an early GTO or maybe a Ventura, but there's another clue we can look at. It's called the emissions sticker. Starting in 1968, pretty much every GM car adopted this sticker right here, which gave an indication of what engine was originally built from the factory. The top left corner we see here, 455 cubic inches, so we know that one time a 455 torque monster moved this Pontiac down the road. But again, 68 up, this is a great way to tell what engine originally came in the car if the VIN doesn't tell you itself. The Mopar Big Block is a legend of the muscle car era. You know, the 383, the 440 6-pack, the Max Wedge. Well, they were all based on these two basic blocks. This one here is a 1960 383 raised deck. That's right, they made these for 1 year with a 2-barrel carburetor. We see the 8.3 stamping on the pad. Now, the raised deck engine is quickly identified by the raised pad up here. The 383 doesn't have it, the low deck. And also, the amount of space between the crank and the deck is much taller on the raised block than it is on the low deck engine. But something to keep in mind about these tall deck engines built before 1962 is the crankshaft. Check this out. Here at the back of the crankshaft, before the 1962 aluminum torque flight came along, all of these Chrysler Big Blocks used a flange with 8 bolts and no threads. They also stick out farther from the block than 62 up, where they went to 6 bolts and actual threaded fasteners. Now, the thing is, the 426 Hemi used an 8-bolt crank, so a lot of guys in the swap meet, when they see this 8-bolt crank, make the mistake of thinking it's a Hemi crank. It's not. It won't work. So there you have it. If anybody ever tells you they never made a 2-barrel raised deck Big Block, they did. Going right here. Ooh. This is a 73 Chevelle SS. This could be a 454 SS. At least it is until I know it's not. And okay, it's not. This would say Super Sport. 1974, the Super Sport was dropped, and Chevrolet replaced it with the S3. And it was kind of more of a general performance car with a NASCAR touch. The front of this car has what they call the Laguna urethane front end. Now, this is a one-piece injection-molded casting, and this was done as a replacement for the multi-piece metal front end that was seen on lesser Chevelles and Malibus. Now, the thing about this is that it's deeper tunneled and more aerodynamic. Behind this urethane face is an impact-absorbing bumper with shock absorbers. The whole idea was to save money on slow-speed impacts. The insurance industry was going nuts with claims, so they tried to push Detroit into things like this. These were available with one of 3 engines, the 350, the 400, or the 454. What have we got? Well, we look at the front fender. Okay, here's the ghost of the emblem, and I see 400. This was a 400 small block car. Beyond that, we can go to the VIN and see what we see there. Okay, the R tells us this is a 400 cubic inch S3 body, but I can take a quick glance at that small block and tell you that's a 350. By contrast, the red Malibu there, that's got a 400 in it. How do we know the difference? Follow me. To expand the classic 350 out to 400 cubic inches, General Motors took the bore
From 400 to 4.125 inches and the stroke
from 348 to 375. So that mandated external balancing. That means we look at the harmonic damper on the front of the engine. If we see a scalloped region on the back side of it, we know we're looking at a 400. Now, standard equipment in the S3 for 1974 were these pivoting Strato bucket seats. Now, this has been exposed to the weather for a long time, so the pivot's rusted solid, but these actually spin out and in for easier entry and exit. Of course, bucket seats were standard fare in all S3s, as was a center console with an automatic shifter on the floor. I want to point out a little piece of cost-cutting on General Motors' part. The standard Malibu had a triangular rear window, big one. Well, for the S3, they had a smaller, sort of a peekaboo opera glass. Well, check this out. The same piece of glass was used on both roof lines. And on the outside of the car, well, they whipped up a simple triangular steel patch, welded in spot, some quick body filler, and voila, project done. Cover it with some black vinyl, and nobody knows the difference. If this car were mine, well, I have to say this thing is a little bit too far gone to warrant restoration. Something like 20,000 of these were built. And keep in mind, too, that this urethane nose was the beginning of the NASCAR wars of the mid-1970s. For 1975 and 76, they actually increased the nose on these cars, which allowed them to be more aerodynamic on NASCAR tracks. And in fact, Cale Yarborough won his first and second of 3 consecutive Winston Cup championships aboard S3 Chevelles.
This one is just a little too far gone. Now, if they had the 454, a big block, I bet Freiberger might like this one. But being a small block car, and we'll toss it back into the sea and move on.
Well, a 63 Pontiac Tempest 2-door post. Reminds me of Arnie Beswick's 421 Super Duty Match Racer, but then again, there's no 421 here. Instead, this is the Pontiac Trophy 4. Now, you gotta keep in mind that 1961, Pontiac launched the Tempest to fight things like the Chevy Corvair, the Volkswagen Beetle, the Ford Falcon, the Plymouth Valiant, and they didn't have a 4-cylinder engine. So what'd they do? Well, they took their 389 V8, sliced off half the cylinders, and created the 194 cubic inch, 3.2 liter for all your metric geeks, 4-cylinder. These were produced between 61, 2, and 3, and then quickly dropped for 1964. Now, the Tempest was Pontiac's senior compact offering for the early 1960s, but what about Buick and Oldsmobile? Well, GM actually invested a lot of money in an all-aluminum V8, a little tiny thing with 215 cubic inches. Now, a lot of folks make the mistake of assuming that the Buick and the Oldsmobile 215 V8s are the same engine. They're not. Big differences. The valve covers on the Oldsmobile take 5 bolts to hold them down. Buick takes 4. Beyond that, the cylinder heads are totally different. The Buick cylinder head has 4 bolts around each combustion chamber. The Oldsmobile used a 5th one. You can see here's a blank for it, but it's not machined out. Also, the valve train, the rocker arms are totally different between the Buick and the Oldsmobile. Now, that 215 V8 was used only between 61, 2, and 3, and then quickly abandoned for 1964. But what happened to the tooling? Well, it was sold to British Leyland in 1967 or so, where it then got used by the Rover 3500 sedan, Range Rovers, Land Rovers, and even the Triumph TR8 sports car. So the 215 died here, but lived on in England for many decades to come. Mid-sized AMC Rambler. These things are cool. I like them. Oh, look at this. A factory 4-speed. Well, there it is, man. Clutch pedal, brake pedal, gas pedal, and this right here, a 4 on the floor. It's got a really tight gate, first, second, third, fourth, reverse with the lockout right there. Keep in mind, 1966, this is the first ever 4-speed stick in any American Motors product, including the AMX, the Rambler machine, all those cars later on. Now, the Rebel itself was kind of a revival of the 57 4-door, but aimed at the youth market for 1966. Standard equipment in Rebels was the bucket seats, the center console. These could be had with the 6-cylinder, the automatic, and the 3-speed, but this one here is incredibly rare. My records show about 150 of these things were built with the 4 on the floor. Let's check out the engine. Powering this one, we have American Motors V8. This one here, okay. The 2-barrel marks this one as a 287. You might wonder, what the heck is that? Well, American Motors brought out their first V8 in 1956, sold as a 250 or a 327. Well, the 250 was dropped after 61, which left a big gap between the 327 and the 6-cylinder engine. So for 1963 and a half, the 287 was brought back to life as a midway engine between the 6-banger and the 327. One thing about this V8, too, is that it's an antique of an engine, and 66 was the final year for the 287 and the 327. They were replaced for 67 with a 290, which grew into the 401 and was a fantastic engine. Now, something cool about American Motors VIN tags is that they have a lot of information. On the 4th digit, we see the letter F. This is a real 4-speed, 4-on-the-floor Rambler Rebel. We go to the 7th digit, we see H, which indicates the 287 2-barrel. Very, very cool. And this, yeah, disc brakes on the front of this one.
Now, these are made by Bendix for Rambler. It is a solid rotor. It's not vented like most other American rotors. Here's the cast iron dual piston caliper with the Bendix logo cast into it. And this front suspension right here, this goes back to 1949. We see here basically a coil spring on top of the strut here, and it's kind of an antiquated design. These would go away for 1970. There's even more weird stuff on this car. The rear suspension and drive shaft and axle are really bizarre. Let's check those out. At the back of this car, we get a look at American Motors torque tube drive. From about the end of World War II right on through 1966, AMC used a tube with a drive shaft inside to transmit power to the rear axles. For 1967, American Motors redesigned all of their cars, got away from torque tube, and went to the open drive. So welcome to the 20th century, American Motors. The rear axle itself is an AMC Model 20. That's a heavy-duty piece with an 8.5-inch ring gear, and the presence of yellow paint here on this torque tube indicates there might be a limited slip differential inside of there. In other words, for you Chevy guys, a posi unit. And that rear axle is about the same piece that was used in later AMXs, machines, and heavy-duty muscle cars, and Jeeps. That's a good axle, heavy-duty piece. If this 66 Rambler Rebel were mine, well, we have to remember that Junkyard Gold isn't about being practical. As American Motors' first four-on-the-floor car, this car needs to be restored right back to square one factory stock. It's one of 7,512 built, but of them, only about 150 got the four on the floor. It cost 100 grand to do it, but it has to happen. Bill Gates, I'm calling you out. In the early 1950s, Packard had a big problem. Their overhead valve V8 wouldn't be ready until 1955. Well, at that time, America was V8 hungry, so Packard had to soldier on with their obsolete inline 8. Now, this engine makes lots of torque, but one of the problems with an inline this big is getting fuel distribution to the end cylinders. In 1953 and 54, the final 2 years for this engine's use, Packard actually used a 4-barrel carburetor in the place of a 2-barrel or a 1-barrel to get better fuel distribution and horsepower out of this obsolete inline 8. Now, the carburetor itself is a Carter WCFB, kind of an obsolete piece in modern days, but these were also used on Corvettes in 1955. So again, flathead inline 8 with a 4-barrel carburetor, yep, Packard made them. Ah, a Chevy Nova. You know, in Spanish, the word Nova translates to, it doesn't go. Well, with the SS350 option, these things did go, especially with a 4-speed and disc brakes. But this one is something special. It's a hatchback. This Nova is a member of the 3rd generation, which were built between 1968 and 74. Now, the thing most Novas had was a trunk, a fixed rear window, but in order to keep up with cars like the Gremlin, certain AMC Hornets, and of course, the Mustang II, the Vega, which were hatchback cars, Chevrolet decided for the final 2 years of Nova production, 73 and 74, to offer a hatchback. Here we see the remains of the lifts. These are spring-loaded, not hydraulic. And in order to give this thing a surface area, sort of a loading floor, Chevrolet built up the standard Nova trunk with a hinged panel. Underneath it is a standard Nova trunk floor, shaving costs wherever they could. Now, these cars, again, were only built between 73 and 74 and were available from the 6-cylinder car all the way up to the SS350, even with the 4-speed. The hatchback Nova, yep, they made them, 73 and 74 only. For this first installment of Roadkill Rescue, I wanted to give the guys something exciting, violent, and fun. And also something that's near and dear to my heart. Yep, it's a 1986 Pontiac T1000. This is Pontiac's take on the Chevy Chevette. Let's take a closer look. The Chevy Chevette was launched in the United States market in 1976 and sold for a full decade. Now, this Pontiac T1000 arrived in the early 80s and kind of did the same thing the Chevette did, but gave Pontiac dealers a piece of the subcompact pie. Now, the Chevette was introduced to fight the Honda Civic and the Volkswagen Rabbit. The trouble is, those two packages were very advanced. They were front-wheel drive. By contrast, the Chevette and the T1000, it's actually quite traditional in its engineering package. It's got an engine up front. This is a 1.6-liter overhead cam 4-banger and has rear-wheel drive. A lot of the interior space is dedicated to the rear-wheel drive architecture. So while these things were antiquated compared to the Rabbit and the Civic, they sold like hotcakes. Let's look inside. Okay, this one is a 3-pedal car, clutch, brakes, gas. This was a 5-speed manual. Here's where the shift handle would have come through the floor. An option would have been the automatic transmission. And little known fact, there was actually a diesel Chevette possible. So if you wanted U-boat power, it was there for the taking. This one does have a sunroof. Somebody must have put that in there. Kind of nice. Finnegan can work on his tan. Fairly complete car, not too bad. Let's take a peek in the back. Like all Chevettes, whether they're 4 doors or 2 doors, has the hatchback, which was standard fare in all of these compact cars because these cars are just as much about utility as they were transportation. And also here, 1986 for the first time, the CMHSL, the centrally mounted high stop lamp. Safety first. But the most important thing about this car is what's under the hatch, the rear-wheel drive. The rear suspension on the Chevette and the T1000 is borrowed from the Opel Kadett of the mid-1960s. After all, Opel was owned by General Motors from 1929 up till about 5 years ago. It consists of a 3-link suspension, coil springs, a light-duty rear axle, and a half torque tube that then has a drive shaft that feeds to the back of the transmission. It's good for the 1.6-liter engine, but a little bit light for what I have in mind. Okay, now that's the backstory of the T1000 and the Chevette. This is the front story. When I was back at Hot Rod magazine, I built a Chevette with a Cadillac 500 engine. You might remember the Bad Seed Chevette. The truth is, these cars will absorb any big block engine you want to throw at them. All you got to do is yank the 4-banger, cut away the firewall, mount that engine so the carburetor's under the windshield. And speaking of that engine, a Caddy 500 is your best choice. It's the most cubic inches you can get in a junkyard for near nothing. You put that engine inside the car, back it with an automatic transmission, just use a Buick Olds Pontiac Turbo 400, feed the power into a Ford Pinto or Mustang 2 8-inch rear axle, and you have got yourself an 11-second wheel-standing big block mini car for under $2,000. Well, Dave Freiberg is still here working on the Roadkill Samurai, so let's bring him over here and see what he has to say about this little project idea. Okay, here we go, Dave. Coming up on it.
No! This is a Pontiac J1000, is that what it's called?
T1000.
T1000.
Also known as at the Chevy dealer.
Chevette.
A Chevette.
You want me to put a CAD 500 in this, don't you?
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. It would work.
Okay, I'm sort of impressed here. You know why? Because I figured for your first pick, it was probably going to be something that was more like mainstream.
Okay.
I think you're picking up the vibe. We could do something with this.
Well, we'll put it in the pipe, think it over.
Okay, let's go over pros and cons. I like this because unexpected. I like it because we can do something freakish with it. I like it. It's American. It's rear-wheel drive. It's super light. We can make it fast.
Yeah.
Does it have the character that we need, and has it never been done before? You've been there and done that and done the world's most famous Cadillac-powered Chevette. I don't know if we can tread that same ground.
Okay, I understand. I got you.
So in summary, I guess I'm gonna say I like it. I don't love it,
okay.
But it's on point. It's in the right direction.
All right, we're gonna keep doing this, and on the next episode, we'll be looking for more roadkill rescues, and we're gonna get it right one of these days. You'll see. That's coming up next time. Be there.